think. Okay, so your food for thoughts should also be healthy, just like food for your body, for your physical health, food for your mental health is also very much important. So good information always helps you to lead a good life, making a good decision. It helps individuals to understand the challenges. It helps individuals to confront the challenges. If you are like in media management also, Peter Drucker has said that you cannot manage change, but you can always be prepared for change or challenges. So if you are well informed, then only you can be prepared for any kind of challenge, any kind of change, or anything which is going to happen in your life. It helps adapt an evolving environment. We have seen that during COVID-19 time, and even after that, there are certain kind of behavior which is required, which is called COVID appropriate behavior, wearing mask in the public spaces or using sanitizer. So how do you think that people are actually adapting to this environment? And how do you think that people are actually adapting to this online environment? Like Principal Sarah has rightly said that this is the silver lining in the pandemic, that we are able to do online lectures and interact online. Hello? Yeah. So we are able to interact online from a long distance. This is a silver lining during the pandemic. So this evolution of environment, we got adapted to it because of help of the good information. We can take care of our family. We can vote with the knowledge of the candidate and all those democratic things which we want to know. We can have control of our life if we have good information, and control of our body also in terms of health and everything. But what is good information? Information which is reliable, which is credible, which you can trust. Not confusing information, not manipulative information, which we are seeing every day today. So the power of information will be realized only when you have correct and good information you will get from any sources, whichever you are accessing. There are some examples like COVID-19 time and after that vaccination drive. The good example and good information is, should I vaccinate my child? How do I know someone is an expert? Means we cannot think that, okay, anybody in media, you all are a journalism student, and you all would agree that whenever we go for reporting, we look for expert on any issue. If somebody has to give any statement on education, that has to be someone who is well-known person from the education department. If you have to talk about health-related issues, you have to talk to the doctor or chief medical officer. So you should know that who is the expert in an area, and only then you should believe that information. And that is what is good information. You cannot talk about the health issues from an educator. So that will be completely different. The educator is maybe an expert in a certain area, but he or she may not be expert in the health issues. So what is the government doing on climate change? This could be one very good example of good information, where we all are concerned as a humanity due to climate change. We all will suffer, and we all will suffer the repercussion of climate change. So what is governments are doing related to this particular issue? Why is somewhat also, you should also question that if there are certain bombardment of certain kind of messages, whether it is religious or patriotic, pseudo-patriotic, sometimes I would say, but why is someone trying to send you that kind of content? Why is someone trying to provoke you? In most of the content which you receive every day, there are so much provoking words. Why does someone try to send you these kind of messages? And why should you try to share it with other people? So these are the questions we should always ask. And what kind of emotion? Because most of the time this kind of manipulative messages or fake messages or bad messages, they are thriving on the basis of your emotions. Okay, they try to, and emotions, when there is no logic, when there is no concrete information and concrete fact, there you fill that gap with emotions. So they try to hit you at your emotional spot. Suppose I am very much a patriotic person, but somebody is challenging my patriotism. I am a religious person, but somebody is challenging my religious sentiments. So what kind of emotions somebody wants to invoke inside you while sending a message, that is what you should look into. Okay, so the layers of information that has to be seen through, that has to be dissected, and then you would be able to analyze any message. And before sending, means what's the need of sharing all these kind of messages when there is no fact in it? Okay. like COVID time, we were very much worried that whether drug stores would be open today or not. So this kind of information are intrinsic information which are related to our day-to-day life. Should I be wearing face mask in public during the coronavirus? Now there has been a mask protest also in US. We have seen that there were many people who actually did not support wearing mask in public spaces. So what is that debate, and whether we should wear it or not? What are the health experts saying? So these kind of information are intrinsic information related to our day-to-day life, and we must know get the information from the correct sources, reliable sources, in order to lead our life securely. So again, I would come to the first point from where I started, that we are trying to portray, and I particularly believe that information should be our human right, because without information, whether we realize or not, we unknowingly, unconsciously, we are leading our life on the basis of information, and there are many cognitions which are working on our mind every time. So what is the Indian perspective, and why, what can we say about, what can we know about human right? So information for human right, the concept is directly, means the concept of human development is directly linked to human rights. You cannot think about development of your people, or the people of your country, or the human development without having certain basic intrinsic rights. So a right-based approach always demands participation in governance, decision-making, participation in the development process, and it is completely dependent upon the guaranteed access to information. Because if you don't have access to information, you want to know that what is being planned for you. So being a citizen of a country, we should have not only access to information, but also this access to information will lead to the participation in the process of decision making. So that is why ultimately the information, or right to information, or access to information is intrinsically associated with and related with human development, and it is related to human rights. So if there is a lack of access to information, people would be completely unaware of developmental schemes. Because, and I can give you example, since I have served in Central Ministry of Kashmir also for 2 years, this scheme Manrega, which is so popular in all over India, one of the students who did a dissertation under me on Manrega, we were surprised to know that there were 2 districts which we studied, Badgaon and perhaps Pulwama, and the people were not knowing about this scheme. So how do you think that if there are welfare schemes and there is a lack of information to the people, to the target audience, their development will be ultimately hindered? It will be completely, I would say, that fractured. So obviously, the information, access to information gives you opportunity to develop yourself, and which is you to develop yourself as a human right. And if you are completely unequipped with the information, then obviously your informed participation in development would not be there. And participation is also one. There are 2 types of participation. General participation and informed participation. If you want to participate in the democratic process, or the participate in the voting process, it should be informed participation. Just on the day of voting, you are going out and just voting anyone. That is not the real participation. That is not your commitment towards democracy. Informed participation means you should have at least background check of all the candidates. You should know who has done what. So informed participation is very much required. And that is why human rights, when we talk about it, we cannot say that, okay, just the participation is enough. It should be informed participation. Means whatever you are doing, you should have all the information. Why do you think that there is, even in Manrega or so many such kind of policies, many times we see that, okay, the rights of the people are actually compromised. Means those who are working under Manrega, they are not getting full money, full payment for their work. Why? Because there is a lack of information. They don't know how much to expect. They don't know what is the rate of working, how much money they should be given. And if they are not given that much amount which they deserve, whom should they go to complain? So the lack of information and lack of access to information, it results in ultimately a vicious cycle of corruption to, I would say that all kind of ignorant democracy and all those fractured kind of system, which is not healthy for any of the country or human society. So that is why information for human development is very, very important. Information for democracy is also essential, because information is a basic right that underpins good governance, democracy, poverty eradication, and the practical realization of human rights. If you don't know about anything, how can you demand your rights? If you don't know that what is your right, and you don't know from whom you should demand it, how can you say anything? You will be nothing but a mute spectator in whatever is happening around you and whatever is happening with your life. So right to information and information for democratic rights is also very much important. And democratic rights are also associated with human rights. So good governance is not only achieved simply by having efficient government or even a democratically elected government. The good governance also happens with the informed participation of the people. Okay, so the norms of freedom of information and the assurance of widespread citizen participation in public affairs and an active civil society are essential for the full realization of democracy. So not only people's participation should be there, but also civil society participation should be there. And if you will demand, you will question, then only a system would try to work, and a system would be accountable enough. Okay, and the government would respond to the needs of the citizen. And this will develop a culture of human rights and accountability, both because you are demanding your rights, and due to your rights, the governance as well as system will be accountable. Okay, so the recognition of right to information is crucial to achieve these ends, hence the need for a guaranteed and legislated right to information. So legislated right to information, legislated human rights to information is very much required. So when we talk about information as a right, we cannot forget right to information, because this has also we got after a long battle. Okay, there has been a very active, I would say that protest, as well as there has been a lot of demonstrations for getting this right to information, but it has not been explicitly recognized in the Indian Constitution. However, the Supreme Court of India has interpreted through various decisions that the right to information is a part of the right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. So the whole, as Thomas sir has also said, that the whole concept of freedom of speech and expression, as well as the right to press, right to whatever kind of right, the reporters as well as journalists are working under this particular right to freedom of speech and expression. We don't have any special right. We are working under this. This is a common right, common article which covers all kinds of rights related to information and media. And this is as much applicable on the common people and as much as on the journalist as well as reporter, because we are not, the journalists and reporters and media persons are not covered under any special kind of article or law. They are also treated under the freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). In addition, Supreme Court of India has also said that right to know is an integral part of right to life, and unless one has the right to information, the right to life cannot be exercised. So if right to information is actually associated with your right to life. So media literacy is also why I'm saying all these things, because all these things are interrelated. So right to correct information, right to have responsible media, right to have information as a very important part of your life is actually a human right. Means I just want to build up a case that how and why it's an human rights. So the realization of human rights is dependent on a democratic society, where the people are empowered with information and knowledge, because we already know, and all of us have realized that information and knowledge is the power which everybody wants to have. Okay, and then if with this power people are able to scrutinize the functioning of the government, and they are capable of participating in a meaningful manner in the governance of a community. So whatever you do with the power of information and knowledge, you can do it better, and you can actually scrutinize everything. You can demand your rights. So realization of human rights is always dependent upon your democratic rights as well as democratic society. So RTI law is a tool. It gives entitlement and the mechanism to obtain information from the government with citizens, with which citizens can become empowered by acquiring a weapon to hold the government accountable, participate in governance, and exercise their rights. So anytime you can actually demand certain kind of information, not only from government but different kind of organization, and you can always act as if it is your human right, because information is what makes you moving. So ensuring implementation is also very much important, because there are many policies which are there, which are already conceived and prepared, and it is already there in the pipeline, but how it is being implemented, whether people are demanding it or not. So it must be kept in mind that mere enactment of law does not mean that government will start implementing it in an effective manner. So implementing any law or anything, any policy in an effective manner demands certain kind of information. It demands that people should also be participating in that process. So civil society organizations, NGOs and others also have a responsibility to ensure that effective implementation of the policies and welfare scheme should be there. So if there is a Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao scheme, you will be surprised to know that in Jammu and Kashmir, in Jammu, one of my students, he did one of his dissertation on Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and we were surprised to know that people were not knowing what kind of facilities they are getting out of it. So what's the point of just implementing one policy or welfare scheme when the people are not knowing about it? So right to information actually is necessary for all kind of welfare scheme to work. So the same is true for implementation of right to information law as well. So if there is any law, that should be known to the people. People should know how and where they can actually file an information requirement anywhere. So they have an important role to play in using the law for the benefit of the people, disseminating information, analyzing information, generate debate on various issues, and in carrying the voices of the voiceless to policymakers. So it's not only one way that what government is, what kind of plans government is actually making or welfare schemes they are running, but also what is your demand? What is the demand of the lowest strata of the society? If they, what is their needs? So those voiceless people's voice should also be conveyed to the policymakers, and there you also need information. So the transparency, the wall between the policymakers and the needy people, that should be broken only by information and the transparency of information. So in case of right to information in international scenario, if we look at it, you will see that the recognition of a right to information in international human rights law was very slow to evolve. So many international human rights bodies, such as United Nations Human Rights Committee, European Court of Human Rights, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and the European Committee on Social Rights have accepted the existence of a right to information in certain circumstances. So these human rights organizations, they have already accepted that right to information is a human rights. So we need to take it forward, and we need to implement on the basis of country to country. So this has invariably occurred in the context of the securing of the other rights, including both civil and political and economic and social rights. So all kind of rights, we call it, whether it is civil right or political or economic and social right, with all these context, the right to information is also considered to be one human right. And what is the foundation of it? The right to freedom of expression, which is related to right to information, also the right to take part in public affairs. It also demands right to information. The right to respect for private life, it also demands a right of information. The right to a fair trial, it is also related to right to information. The right to life is also related to right to information. So your economic and social rights also related to right to information. So the foundations of right to information are these 6 foundations, which I have shown it to you. Some are directly related to right to information, some are not directly related. But there are some important quotes which I would like to say here and mention here, because these are very important to build up this case. That Stiglitz said that I also believe that greater openness has an intrinsic value. Citizens have a basic right to know. So citizens have the right to know, and that is why we are talking that right to information everybody should have, and it should be treated as human rights. So Florini also argued that access to information is not only a necessary concomitant of the realization of all other rights, but it is also a fundamental human rights. So he said that to exercise all these A, B, C, D, E, F rights, you should have right to information, because without right to information, you cannot exercise all these rights. So basically, this is what the part. And then freedom of speech, assembly, association, etc., which is already given in Indian Constitution, Article 19(1), where it says that all citizens have the right to freedom of speech and expression, right to assemble peaceably and peacefully and without arms, right to form unions and association, right to move freely throughout the territory of India, right to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India. So freedom of speech and expression, it talks about so many rights, and all these rights have been taken from Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, where also Article 19 says that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression, and everyone has the right to freedom of peacefully assembly and association. So similar rights have been already declared in 1948 by Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we have taken from there in Article 19(1)(a) similar rights we have actually borrowed from there. So I talked about that, okay, why information is important, and how information is very much just like a human right, and it should be treated like a human right, because our lives depend hugely upon the information we receive, and our lives, our social context, our complete behavior, our responses towards all types of situation depends upon the information we get. So that is why information should be treated as a human right. Now, let us talk about information as an accountability. Now, that is also very much important, because you cannot exercise your right if you are not accountable towards something. So your limit of your rights will be completely seized when the limits of other people's right will start. So you have to understand that accountability is very much important. So there is a relation between transparency and accountability. Transparency always ensures accountability. So if I know that, okay, my transactions are visible to everyone, I would be very, very careful in transacting anything. If I know that, okay, whatever I am sharing, it will be seen to everyone, then I will be very much responsible towards, I will be accountable towards sharing any information. So transparency always ensures accountability. So access to information has been widely linked to the achievement of both transparency and accountability. Accountability, it is very difficult to fix accountability without transparency. So even in government working system, we demand transparency, and how we demand transparency? By right to information. So transparency can be understood as a means to achieve the end of a more responsive state that more effectively achieves democratically agreed upon ends. So whatever democratically wider the perception or wider system we have accepted, our leaders are bound to that. And that is why we can demand transparency in all their actions. So while its scope extends beyond access to information, it is clear that access to information plays a pivotal role in the achievement of a transparency. So transparency can be ensured and can be achieved only if we have access to information. Okay, so for our social functioning also, this access to information is necessary, because the concept of citizenship and everything depends upon this access to information. Now, is there any specified right to correct and fair information? For that, I would say no. There is no specified right to correct information, right to fair information. There is nothing like that. So there is a small exercise we would do right here, and then I will move to the second part about accountability and what is our fake news and everything. So from where do you get your information from? So you can just let me put this link in the chat box. You can just click it and respond. Click it and write your answer. This is a link. You can click it and write your answer. I can see it here. There are three options. From where, which sources you get the information. And already Thomas sir has teased you in the beginning that your sources of information, do you pay attention towards it? So just do that, and then let me see what are you writing. We can all see it from here. There are only 3 options given, so you can just give 3 most used options, source of information, multiple sources, okay? Try to give a very specific answer. Your sources of information, multiple sources. I know that everyone, we are bound to get multiple sources, information from multiple sources. We can't help it. We cannot squeeze it. Newspaper, TV, internet, fine. Social media, yes. Newspaper, social media, government websites, print media. Friends, yes, that's also very much important. We get information from peer group also. Many people are writing social media. Google, yes, of course, Google is a very important source of information. Books, yes. That's an interesting answer. Yes, books are very, very important for all kind of knowledges and information. I have kept only 1 minute for this exercise. So in 1 minute, if you are ready to answer, fine. Otherwise, we will move ahead. Teachers. Oh, so we are also getting some kind of credit. Very nice. Thank you. Mass media, yes. Social media and newspaper is leading. Okay. So let me go back to the presentation. And why did I do this exercise? Because you see that most of us, it will be very difficult to find out that from where we are getting information. There are so many sources, and some sources where we cannot control it. It is all around us. If somebody is giving information from a loudspeaker, you cannot stop yourself. And if something is happening, some FM channel is working in your already in your car, or if you are surfing through internet, there are so many sources of information you can't even help. Okay, you can't help looking at the billboard at the roadside. Okay, so sometimes information you choose, sometimes information are directly coming to you. So there is an information overload every time, every day we are feeling, and the main sources of information nowadays are social media. So I did a very quick survey in my classroom, and I found that all the youngsters are even getting news from social media. Means forget about newspaper, forget about television. They are only getting news and information from social media, and also they are not liking text messages. They are liking audio visual messages. So these are new trends, and that is why the mobile-led internet is much more popular nowadays. So the challenge of overwhelming flood of misinformation, we call it misinformation and disinformation because fake news is a very vague term. It's a very, I would say that fake news is an oxymoron. So a very senior professor, Professor K.G. Suresh, says that if it is a news, it cannot be fake, because the concept of news, since you all are journalism student, you know that news cannot be, any information cannot be converted into news without fact checking. Okay, so if it has been fact checked, it has been already gone through the gatekeeping process, then it is not, it cannot be fake. So that's why Professor KG Suresh says that, okay, it is an oxymoron. We cannot call anything fake news. So it is a very ill-defined term. So in academics, we try to avoid this term fake news. It's a colloquial term. It is used to disregard and refute and discredit any information which you do not like. So that is why this term misinformation and disinformation is very much used. Nowadays, and not only nowadays, since last 2 years, we are facing a flood of misinformation all the time. And during COVID-19 pandemic, it was at the height of everything. So actually, why it happened? Because access to internet in the country like India is growing every day. So estimated 650 million people were online in 2020. Today, this figure is 680 million. Very soon, we will cross 700 million. So we are second largest internet users in the world. First one is China. But I would say that, again, we all know that there are many sites which are blocked inside China, which are not allowed in China. So we are second largest internet user, but we are the biggest market also. Okay, because here all the tech giants, they can come, we have such a good, I would say, target audience, consumers of all kind of technology due to this increasing internet market. 50% of India's population, that is 1.33 billion, is having access to internet. So India has the largest user base for platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube. So internet. And also there is one very interesting fact that internet is no longer an urban or elite commodity. Even rural people, small city people, they are also using internet so much. And also searches in regional languages from small cities are being seen on Google. Okay. And you have seen that there is a very easy example, TikTok videos. Who used to make it? People from rural areas, people from small cities. They were making TikTok videos, and also on YouTube, you will find that of videos which are not only generated by people from small towns, but also consumed by people from small towns. And there are many videos which are made to cater the taste of these people. Okay, so here in India, our market, the market for this kind of content and online, the largest user base for platform like Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube is increasing, and still there is a potential of 50% more increment of this market. So you can just imagine that why India has a sudden boom in all kind of social media and all kind of liberal policies towards from social media. But also then the thing is that apart from all these things, access to internet, the thing is that local language search means like Google has started making its Google has started providing all the searches in local languages, because we know that no longer people will be using only English for searches on Google. So these are the condition of access to internet in India. So in that scenario, the huge flood of fake information or misinformation is bound to happen. And what is the social media scenario? Because social media is the greatest contributor in the misinformation and disinformation in India. So 70,000 plus searches on Google happens every second. 50 crore blogs are written every day. 500 hours of videos are uploaded on YouTube every minute. 35 crore photos are uploaded on Facebook every day. 50 crore people use Instagram stories every day, and 6,000 tweets are posted on Twitter every second. So you can just imagine that how much time we are actually spending virtually. So it's almost like a virtual world where we are actually moving from physical to virtual, virtual to physical. So every time we are immersed in this kind of world. So why? And all kind of misinformation and disinformation, it is propagated through social media. Social media is the biggest channel of misinformation and disinformation. And why is so? Because everyone is a publisher. You, me, everyone. We have this mobile phone in our hand. Whatever content we want, we can upload. We don't need any gatekeeper to approve it. We don't need anyone to check it, fact check it, or we don't need anyone to clear our story, as it happens in newspapers or mainstream media. So we all have a printing press in our hands, and it is enabling a different types of communication. One person to person communication. If you want to do only interpersonal communication, it is possible on social media. If you want organization like group communication with people, it is possible on social media. If you want that many people should communicate to many people, it is also possible on social media. Earlier, you had different types of media for all different type of communication. Now you have only one media which is enabling you to communicate all types of communication. Okay, so that is why, and any unknown person, any person who was not so much acknowledged earlier, he or she can be very much initially, means immediately he or she can be viral through social media, and their content could be liked by people through social media. So anything can happen on social media, and people are liking this kind of sudden celebrity status. So that is why social media is very much prone to misinformation. So people are doing everything to get to become famous, and this media allows them. And what is the biggest difference between the traditional media and social media? I'm sure you all must be knowing it, but still I want to reiterate these facts, because in traditional media, a raw information is published as a news only when it is verified and cross-checked from reliable sources by reporters and editors. If you go to a newspaper, you will find that there is a whole layers of editors, and from one table to other table to other table, there are many desk editor, and after that deputy news editor, after that news editor who check your copy. And it's not easy to get through that. Okay, so if you are your copy is thoroughly fact checked, only then your information or your piece of writing will be published. But on social media, there is no verification, no gatekeeping, no editor. Only one click, one swipe is all it takes. So that is why social media is a very accessible, means that is why it is one carrier of misinformation and disinformation. So why we are so much worried, and we are actually having this awareness drive for fake information or such kind of misinformation, because there are very, very, very dire consequences of fake information. According to one data, in 2018, more than 29 people lost their lives due to WhatsApp rumor. And mob lynching happened. 29 people were killed due to fake rumor on WhatsApp. Okay, child trafficking related rumors and many others. Okay, it also, in many cases, it was responsible for riots, communal riots, and these happened, and people's lives are being sacrificed only due to fake information, and I would say that only due to rumors, and this is very careless. So this is high time that we should realize that we cannot consume anything which is coming to us, and we cannot share everything which is coming to us. Okay, so here we have to be accountable. Our accountability lies here, because somebody's life depends upon it. Okay, so also during COVID time, we have seen that there have been so many unfortunate events happen due to fake information. More than 700 people died in Iran after consuming toxic alcohol, believing in rumors that alcohol will help prevent the coronavirus infection. So, and this is a true, means this happened in Iran, and 700 people died due to this rumor. And not only that, in India, there have been multiple cases where people consume sanitizer. Some people actually self-medicate themselves, and they lost their life. So actually, fake information or any kind of misinformation is capable of damaging to the extent that somebody's life can be taken. Okay, so that is why we are talking about media literacy. So media literacy, not only as a right, we cannot just demand information, we cannot just demand correct and true information, but we have to be responsible also. So media literacy is both a right and a responsibility. Your right, your limit of rights actually completely finishes where the others' rights, the limit of others' rights is started. So how rumors spread? There is a whole mechanism, system of rumor, spreading of rumor. So there is a content, obviously diverse content, and these are circulated online. It creates panic among people, sometimes concern among people. Sometimes we share something in the good faith that it will help our near and dear one, without checking anything. So panic or concern, it triggers sharing of the information, and this sharing of information lead to misleading information, which again leads to action on false information. Like I can give you a very small and simple example that at the time of Corona, every after 2 or 3 days, there would be a rumor that, okay, you just get to fill your tanks because the petrol pumps will be locked and there will be no petrol available. And then it used to be 5 kilometers long line on petrol pumps. So actions led by misinformations, okay, and it creates such a panic and chaos in the system, which damages our society. Sometimes this damage is irreversible. If there is a riot, if there is a loss of life, it is irreversible, you cannot change it. So damage to the social fabric of the society is the biggest damage. And we feel very much proud because India is a multilingual, multi-religious, you can say that we feel proud that we have unity in diversity. We are people with so much different diverse faith, and in that situation, these kind of misinformation and disinformation create certain damage to the social fabric of our country. So that is irreversible, and it is going to pay for the long time. So that is why it is very important to understand that what is information, what is news, as Thomas sir has rightly said, that whether you check that certain information which is coming to you is news or not, all information which is coming to you is not news. So all information cannot be news, but all news can be information, and all news are information. So that difference we need to learn, that we have to make this difference. Whatever is coming to us is not news. Okay, so we have to choose, we have to select that which is the credible information, where is the credible information, where should, let us do some kind of research before believing on any information. When we have to buy anything, I see that every time teenagers and youngsters, when they have to buy a mobile phone or laptop, they do a lot of search, okay, which has a better memory power, which has a better RAM, and then they go for buy. Why can't we do that just for the news? Because we don't consider it important. But that is why I'm telling you that it is very, very important. It is damaging. It will damage us for a very long time. So that is why you should be very, very choosy in even selecting your news and information. So what are you consuming? From where you are consuming? Do a little bit of research. All the youngsters and teenagers are much more tech savvy than us. So and also we understand that there are many information which are considered as news, but they are opinions. There is a difference between news and opinion. Okay, so you will see that certain people who are considered as a very respected person of the society, they write something as a piece of opinion. That could be their personal opinion, but that is not an objective news. So that difference we need to understand. These are very small things, minute things, but we have to know it in order to get the credible information. And also we need to understand information neighborhood, means from where, what is our ecosystem, from where we are getting information. And that is why I asked you that, okay, what is the source of your information? So information neighborhood means the immediate environment, immediate ecosystem from where you are getting information. So understanding that is very much important. And again, I would like to define misinformation in one word, that is, misinformation is that kind of information which is false, but the people who are disseminating it believes that it is true. So out of being my naivety or out of ignorance, I might share some information thinking that it is true, but misinformation is a false information, but I don't know while sharing that it is a false information. So it is unintentional most of the time. But disinformation is that kind of information that is false, but the person who is disseminating knows that it is false. So it is a deliberate, intentional lie. So disinformation, we have to be, and there is a lot of organized disinformation which is being created nowadays. So why media literacy? Because people tend to trust network of friends and family for news, because most of the someone in the exercise wrote that you get news from or information from friends. Yes, we get information from friends. Many times we do not believe whatever is being shared or spread on WhatsApp. We do not believe them because of the message, but because the person who is sharing it. If my best friend is sharing it, it cannot be wrong. That is our emotion and that is our feeling. And these organic formations are reflected and exacerbated by social media platform. So on social media, we tend to believe something because our peer group also believes that. So that is why media literacy is very much important, and it teaches us that how to be objective, how to be very much clear about selecting the information. And let me go through very quickly these important concepts, which is filter bubble, because on all social media websites or social media sites, you will find that whatever you like, what kind of information you like, it will come again and again in your feed. And you can do a very small exercise. If you will open two different accounts with completely two different browsers, you will find out, and in one account, if you will like something else, in another account, if you will like something else, you will get feed from completely different from these two in these two accounts, because the algorithm there, it calculates your choice. It understands that, okay, this particular account likes these kinds of posts, so you will get again and again the similar kind of posts. So what happens that something which might be wrong also, it will be provided to you again and again, and your stereotypical thoughts would be very hardened due to that, and it will create a kind of echo chamber. So whatever you think, with the supply of similar kind of information, your thoughts will be strong, your thoughts will not be flexible, you will be adamant, and in most of the case it leads to orthodox behavior also. So that is very much dangerous, what is happening on social media. These two things, filter bubble and echo chambers, this is very much dangerous to create certain kind of very hardened attitude towards certain kind of situations, and in that situation it is very difficult to make the people understand about it. So how can we brought these things into the ages of human rights? Because according to Sen, the recognition of claims as human rights depends upon their capacity to survive open scrutiny. So anything which we consider collectively that it is our right, like right to food, like right to education. Similarly, on the basis of this test, we can argue that the right to information meets the requirement of recognition as an intrinsic right. So we can also argue to include media and information literacy to be recognized as intrinsic human rights, because intrinsic human right has a lot of advantages. First of all, it is standalone rights. It is not right which is combined with anything. Like today we have these rights under the right to freedom of speech and expression. Otherwise, it will be standalone rights. So there will be no limitation to the nature of the rights. And it is not individualistic, rather collective rights. Like the whole society will have this right, not a one person. Okay. And no negative effect on other rights. It has no negative effect on other rights. So such a right for media and information literacy is very hard to resist. So we want it right now. And that is why we are talking about information, media and information literacy as a human rights as well as accountability. So with this, I can stop my talk.
All right. That was so extensive, ma'am. Thank you very much. Actually, it was just like, starting from the foundations down and brick by brick that you are actually building the house of Mary, information, starting from the power of information and saying that it is actually a right. It's a human right. I mean, it is through which we are actually develop ourselves and the human development as a whole, or it is through which we actually build a democracy and information. I mean, as you have emphasized, is the right, and it's the human right which exists along with all other rights, and there should be law to actually to enable it, and there should be, it should be implemented, and sometimes we need to ensure through certain pressure mechanisms to implement it, maybe the government or those who are in power, right? And starting from there to it's very important to be informed citizens in any democracy. So unless there is no informed citizen, there is no democracy at all. There is no point in having that. So then also you covered, right, so transparency and accountability, and the question that for which we have answered by social media, newspaper, and most prominently social media by the participants. It shows, right? So from where you access the news or information or whatever it is, but how do you actually analyze it, evaluate it, and how do you actually react to that, and how do you create your own content? So that is the critical point anyway. So maybe it is also important to distinguish between the traditional media, the social media, and how the news or the information processed in each segment of media. And yes, so media literacy is actually about rights and responsibility. It's both right and responsibility. So how many of us actually do check or fact check the information that we receive, or whatever we receive, right? So how many of us do check it and then pass the information to others? Okay, so you might have received this particular message, but it is fake. I mean, if we were doing that, definitely, we might have avoided certain, maybe lynchings or certain communal rights. So we might be able to do that, right? So if there was no disinformation, or sometimes it happens as misinformation without the knowledge of the source, right? That they are actually disseminating something which is false. So from there to information was news was opinion, and as I all, this is the gist of the presentation. And I have a humble request to each and every participant. If you do have a question, right? So please do raise it now. Since there are no questions in the chat box, I request you to unmute and ask. So maybe we will be able to take 2 questions, and we will be winding up the session exactly at 8 o'clock. So please do. Is there an option to raise your hand? If not, please do unmute and ask the question. Right. So yeah, thank you very much for that beautiful presentation. And Archana ma'am, 1 second. Yeah.
Medha sir, we have a question in the in-call messages. Should I read it out?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I can see that, right? Ma'am, there is a question from Rasha Wadakan. If we implement a regulatory body for social media, will it be effective? Will such a body be misused? Right, a lot with censorship.
So it's a very interesting question, and most of the time we talk about, and it's a debate which is going on in our country, that regulation on social media. Now you see that the problem is that social media, the basic concept of social media when it came into being, I don't know whether you remember or not, but I clearly remembered that the very concept of internet was very democratic at that time. That okay, internet was something, or social media was something which suddenly gave power to everyone, and now there is no monopoly of one group or one organization to publish something. So everybody will have a voice. So the whole notion was very much democratic at that time when social media came. Okay, now it is taking turns, and now we are seeing that when the power of social media was realized by the powerful section of the government, as well as in international scenario, you will see that the power structure, when they realize the power of social media, they tried to use it. Why are we seeing so much of fake information and misinformation, disinformation? And do you know this interesting fact that at the time of election, there is a research that the number of these kind of misinformation, disinformation, they multiply 1,500 times. So why means that there is a deliberate attempt to create this kind of misinformation or disinformation. So you know that the power structure all over the world are using social media. Social media has become a very nice weapon for them to propagate their agenda. Okay, so that is why if you would try to regulate it, and you will give the power in the hands of these power structure or these power blocks, that will be again our loss. Means what I feel, that if there will be regulation, then again those voices which are legitimate, which do not have any other options, and they want to express themselves, they will be also be completely suppressed. So that would be that is not something we want. So since long, I hope that Thomas sir would agree that even journalists do not want any kind of external regulation on from government on media. We don't want, because we know that, and that is why we always advocate that there should be self-regulation in media. So why can't we self-regulate on social media also? I think the awareness and media literacy is the best answer to all kind of problem. Instead of having regulation or having laws imposed on the people that you cannot publish, so that will be completely misused. You know that right now social media is the very hot cake in the hands of all people who wants to propagate any kind of agenda. So if there would be regulation, then certainly you want to oppose anything, if you want to say anything, your voice will be completely suffocated. So that is why I am not in the favor of having any external imposition of any regulation on social media. Rather, you should work out some kind of mechanism where you can literate yourself. This is an environment, this will happen, the change will go on, but we have to be ready for change. That's all.
That's true, ma'am. On the other extreme, end, right? So when we talk about self-regulation as well, what is the motivation behind that self-regulation? That is also a concern in these times, right? So yeah. So thank you very much for that wonderful question, Rasha. Right. So is there anyone else with another question? Or faculty members? Yeah. Okay. So there is another question from Ardra. Nowadays we have legal literacy in schools. Similarly, should we be introducing media literacy in schools as well?
Of course, it is very, very much needed. I think that this is the only answer. Media literacy is the only answer where we cannot control the environment. See, social media is kind of uncontrolled environment. You cannot control it. Even Facebook owner cannot control Facebook, okay, because it has its own life. It is growing at its own pace. If you will see the journey of media, you will see that, okay, print media, first newspaper was there in 1780, and after 200 years in 1924 radio came. So that much, after so much time gap, we have another media. But in internet, in social media, you see that it is moving so fast, and we are we take time to adapt to it. So every day something new is happening. So media literacy is a must, should be introduced in the school. And I'm very happy to say that we have also introduced one program under our media literacy campaign that is called BBC Young Reporter, in collaboration with BBC, and I am also one of the trainer, and we are targeting the students from class 9 to 12 under that program, and we try to make them literate, because these are the adolescents who are using internet for the first time, and they don't know what to consume and what not to consume. Okay, so that is why, and we are making up this case. We are talking to school that please introduce media literacy as a part of their curriculum. And not only that, even in new education policy also, not actually media literacy's word is written, but media as a subject is being promoted as a vocational subject. So under that subject, there is a scope for us teachers that we can introduce media literacy. So we can always take up this cause and we can talk to the people. And I'm very much in favor of introducing it at a school level, because nowadays even 10-year-old child, 11-year-old child, all of them are using internet and social media. So what's the point of not literating them?
So actually the answer is very simple, right? So whoever consume media supposed to be media literate, and if your 5-year-old sibling is actually consuming media, they ought to be media literate. Otherwise, the effect of that media or its impact is we cannot actually predict what could happen. So we do know what happens with video games like Blue Whale and all, right? So just like that. So I think it's high time to wind up. Ma'am, any concluding remarks?
I just hope that it was useful to all of you, because it was very much heavy talk. And as a concluding remark, I just want to say that it is the responsibility of all of us. That we have to go beyond our role. Okay, so we cannot say that, okay, we are just a journalist and we have nothing to do with the people who are consuming our content. So our role is not limited nowadays. We will have to be crusader. We will have to teach and make people aware about certain things. And if we will fail to do that, because as a media educator, but I feel that this is my responsibility, because in this business and in this media, if we are failing people and we are losing the trust of the people, it is our loss. In the long run, people would not believe on mainstream media, people would not believe on you. So that will be a biggest loss for all of us. So media literacy should be, I would say that it should be advocated, it should be, awareness should be generated by everyone. And let us start from ourselves. Let us practice doing only one thing that Thomas sir said, that from where the news came. Okay, just check the source, and then only, please, if you have any doubt, take a step back and do not share it. At least that much we all can do that.
All right, yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. It is very important to ensure that, right? So actually, it is just like literacy as well. Literacy is a tool in our hands with which we need to maybe inform ourselves. So just like that, media literacy is something which enables us to know what goes behind the very processing of message. Because at the end of the day, media is the tool through which message is actually conveyed or communicated, and how it is actually processed and presented and given to you. Knowing that is the important thing. So, as I said, right, so maybe it is important to, as ma'am said, it is important to use the tool in our hand, because we don't know what did the literate people did, maybe in the past, right? So maybe around 70-75% of Indian population are literate, but whether did they use the tool, right, to inform themselves and then be actively participate in the democratic process. So that is the key question. So it's not about being media literate, but it is about using that particular tool or practicing it, as ma'am emphasized on that. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this evening, and it is also good to remember certain tools. Maybe I forgot to mention, like fact check or reverse image check on Google, or some tools of that sort, which you can use actually identify fake news or misinformation, or at least, sometimes it is common sense, which can actually play a key role in identifying those kinds of information. So thank you very much joining with us and then joining this hour. And just like media literacy is our human right, food is also another thing. Right? It's high time for dinner as well. So thank you very much. So over to Anish, sir. Right.
Thank you, Archana ma'am. Thank you, Miljo. It was a pleasure listening to both of you. I now call upon our head of the department, Varghese Anthony, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hello. Yes. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir.
Hello. It was an exciting and interesting session on the various dimensions of media and information literacy. And we came to know about the fact that democracy works best in an information society. And my heartfelt gratitude to the main presenter of the day, Mrs. Archana Kumari, who has given an inspiring speech, inspiring talk on various dimensions of media and information literacy. And I express my gratitude on behalf of the Department of Mass Communication and NMSM Government College, Calcutta. We are looking forward to you in the future. Definitely when the COVID time is over, we want your physical presence in our college. Definitely hoping to see you face and to have a face-to-face interaction in our college. And we thank Dr. Meljo Thomas, who moderated the session beautifully. And also thanks to our principal who presided the function, Shaji sir, who is always a great motivation to all our activities and have given us support to conduct academic activities like this. And we are also grateful to Dr. Shibu B, who is the IQAC coordinator. And actually this lecture series, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, is his brainchild. And I also thank all the participants from the staff, and the students of our college, and from for the students who are from outside the college, and the staff from other institutions, the teaching staff from other institutions. And I also thank Anish sir, who is the coordinator of this session. Once again, I thank all my colleagues in my department and all the ones who participated in this beautiful intellectual discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony sir. Thank you, Anish sir. Thank you, Thomas sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Anish, sir. Yeah.
Ma'am, we should conclude by playing the national anthem. So please fight for the national.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे। भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा। तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा। जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे।